The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. I know because I was staring at the clock, wondering why my wife Nicole was whispering in our bathroom like she was planning a bank heist. "You know you're the only one who ever really satisfied me." Her voice drifted through the thin door. "Tom's just safe, like a savings account nobody gets excited about." I lay there in our king-size bed, processing the fact that my wife of 6 years had just compared me to a financial instrument with low interest rates. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'm a tech consultant who actually understands compound interest, and apparently I'd been getting screwed by it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. When Nicole finally slipped back into bed, I pretended to be asleep. She smelled like guilt and expensive perfume, a combination I was becoming familiar with. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing had happened. Nicole had always been good at compartmentalizing. It's what made her such an effective HR manager at TechFlow, the startup where she'd been climbing the corporate ladder one backstabbed coworker at a time. "I need to tell you something," she said, not looking up from her phone. Even her breakfast multitasking felt like a power move. I waited, sipping coffee that tasted like betrayal with a hint of Colombian beans. "I'm keeping Derek in my life. He's been there for me through some tough times, and I'm not giving up that friendship." She finally looked at me, her green eyes daring me to object. "You can either deal with it, or you can leave." Derek, her ex-husband. The same Derek who'd cheated on her with her sister, leading to their divorce 3 years ago. The same Derek who now owned a used car dealership and apparently specialized in recycling relationships. I set down my coffee mug with deliberate calm. "Interesting ultimatum." "It's not an ultimatum. It's just reality." "Deal with it or leave," I repeated slowly. "Those are my two options?" Nicole shrugged, already turning back to her phone. "Pretty much." "Huh." I stood up, straightening my tie. "I choose option 3. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, confusion flickering across her perfectly contoured face. "What's option 3? I smiled, the kind of smile that probably should have worried her. "You'll find out." The boxing gym smelled like sweat, determination, and broken dreams. It was my favorite place in the city, a blue-collar sanctuary where nobody cared about your LinkedIn profile or your wife's startup success story. Maya, my trainer, was wrapping her hands when I walked in looking like I'd been hit by an emotional freight train. "Let me guess," she said without looking up. "Princess Nicole struck again?" Maya was 45, built like a brick house, and had the kind of street wisdom that came from surviving 3 divorces and a stint as a private investigator. She'd been training me for 2 years, and somewhere between learning how to throw a proper hook and getting my ass kicked by her regularly, we'd become friends. "She's keeping her ex-husband around. Told me to deal with it or leave." Maya snorted. "And you said?" "Option 3. "Good man. What's option 3? "Still working on that part." She tossed me a pair of gloves. "Well, while you're working on it, let's work on your right cross. You're gonna need it." 3 days later, I had my answer. It came in the form of Derek's business card, which I found in Nicole's purse while looking for aspirin. On the back, written in her handwriting, "Can't wait for tonight. Same place. N." I photographed it, then did what any reasonable husband would do. I went through her phone. The password was still our anniversary date. Either Nicole was sentimental, or she was arrogant enough to think I'd never check. Given what I found, I was betting on arrogance. The text thread with Derek was a masterclass in emotional manipulation and sexual nostalgia. But it was the thread with someone named Brad that really caught my attention. Brad, according to the messages, was her college boyfriend. Brad, who was apparently also married. Brad, who was also getting the "you're the only one who really understands me" treatment. My wife wasn't just cheating, She was running a full-scale romantic Ponzi scheme. I screenshot everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud drive, and then did something that surprised even me. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh or a broken laugh, but genuine amusement. Nicole had always been ambitious, but I'd underestimated her capacity for multitasking. That evening, I called Derek. "Tom?" He sounded surprised. We'd only met a handful of times, usually at social events where he'd show up uninvited, and Nicole would spend the evening catching up with him. "Hey, Derek, want to grab lunch tomorrow? I think we should talk." There was a pause. "About what?" "About Nicole, about you, about the interesting situation we all seem to be in." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. Luigi's on 5th Street, noon. Don't worry, I'm not the violent type. I just want to have a conversation between two men who've both been inside my wife." I hung up before he could respond. Luigi's was the kind of Italian restaurant where the checkered tablecloths had seen better decades, and the owner's mother still made the sauce. Derek was already there when I arrived, looking like a man who'd spent the morning practicing his explanation in the mirror. He was handsome in that generic car salesman way. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, and the kind of tan that came from a bottle. Everything about him screamed upgrade, which I suppose was the point. "Tom," he stood up, extending his hand like we were closing a business deal. "Thanks for calling. I think there might be some misunderstanding." I sat down without shaking his hand. "The only misunderstanding is how long you thought you could keep screwing my wife without me finding out." His face went through several color changes before settling on pale green. "Look, I can explain." "Please do. But first, let me save us some time." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Nicole's texts, the one where she described, in considerable detail, what she wanted to do to him in the back seat of his Camaro. Derek stared at the phone like it might explode. "Where did you get that?" "From the woman who's been telling both of us that we're the only one who really understands her." I put the phone away. "Tell me about Brad." "Brad?" "College boyfriend Brad, the one she's also been texting, the one she told about our dead bedroom and how she needs a real man to remind her what passion feels like." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "She's seeing Brad too?" "Among others, I suspect. Nicole's always been goal-oriented, but apparently her goals include collecting ex-boyfriends like Pokemon cards." We sat in silence while Derek processed the fact that he wasn't Nicole's only side piece. The waiter came by twice before Derek finally spoke. "What do you want from me?" "Honesty. How long has this been going on?" 6 months. Maybe 7. He looked miserable, which was oddly satisfying. "She called me after we ran into each other at the grocery store. Said she was unhappy, that you didn't appreciate her. And you believed her?" I wanted to believe her. "Nicole, she has a way of making you feel like you're the most important person in the world. Until you're not." Derek nodded slowly. "She's been asking me for money lately. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Said you were having financial problems." I almost laughed. Our joint account had over $40,000 in it, and I made twice what Nicole did. "How much?" "About $3,000 total. I thought I was helping her, helping both of you." "You were helping her fund her other relationships." The color drained from his face completely. "Jesus." "I'm going to ask you to do something, Derek. I want you to text her. Tell her you can't see her anymore. Tell her you're working things out with your wife." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I'm going to send screenshots of your conversations to everyone in your contact list, starting with your wife and ending with your mother." Derek stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're not who I thought you were. Neither is Nicole. Neither are you, apparently. But here we are." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and typed the message while I watched. When he finished, I stood up. "One more thing, Derek. If you ever contact my wife again, If you ever come to my house, if you ever so much as look at her sideways, I will make your life very complicated. Are we clear?" He nodded, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been swimming with sharks. "Good. Enjoy your lunch. I hear the lasagna's excellent." Nicole's reaction to Derek's breakup text was everything I'd hoped for and more. She came home that evening like a tornado in designer heels, slamming doors and muttering under her breath about cowardly men and timing. I was in the kitchen, making dinner with the kind of domestic tranquility that probably looked psychotic under the circumstances. "Bad day at work?" I asked, not looking up from the stir-fry. "Derek's being weird," she said, pouring herself a large glass of wine. "Men are so confusing." Maybe he's got other things going on." She shot me a look, trying to gauge whether I knew something. I kept my expression neutral, the picture of a clueless husband focused on his vegetables. "Maybe," she said finally. Over the next few days, I watched Nicole spiral in the most entertaining way possible. She kept texting Derek, getting increasingly desperate when he didn't respond. She started staying late at work, which I assumed meant she was spending more time with Brad or whoever else was in her rotation. The beauty of Nicole's personality was that she couldn't handle rejection. It didn't compute in her worldview. She was the one who did the rejecting, the one who held the power, the one who kept men dangling while she decided their fate. But Derek's sudden absence had thrown off her entire ecosystem. Meanwhile, I was doing research. Brad turned out to be Brad Morrison, a real estate developer who'd made a fortune flipping houses during the market recovery. He was married to a woman named Jennifer, had 2 kids, and according to his social media presence, was living the American dream in a McMansion in the suburbs. He was also, according to Nicole's texts, planning to leave his wife for her. Or at least that's what Nicole believed. Brad's messages were considerably more ambiguous, full of "when the time is right" and "we need to be careful," the universal language of married men who had no intention of changing their circumstances. I spent a week documenting everything: screenshots, timestamps, financial records showing the money she'd taken from our joint account to pay for hotel rooms and lingerie. Nicole had always been detail-oriented in her professional life, but apparently infidelity had made her sloppy. The evidence was damning, comprehensive, and beautifully organized in a folder I labeled Option 3. But evidence was just the beginning. What I really needed was a plan. That's when Maya introduced me to the concept of strategic humiliation. "You want to hurt her?" Maya asked, unwrapping her hands after a particularly brutal training session. "Don't just expose her, destroy her credibility, make everyone see who she really is." "How?" "Social proof. Nicole's whole identity is built on being the successful, desirable woman who has her shit together. Take that away, and what's left?" Maya was right. Nicole's power came from perception. The perception that she was in control, that she was the prize, that men competed for her attention while she graciously chose among them. But what if everyone knew she was just another cheating spouse running a sad con game on multiple fronts? The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Nicole's company was throwing a launch party for their new app, some social media platform that was supposed to revolutionize how people connected. The irony was too perfect to ignore. The party was at Skyline, a trendy rooftop bar downtown where the city's young professionals went to see and be seen. Nicole had been planning her outfit for weeks, treating it like her personal red carpet moment. She didn't invite me. "It's really more of a work thing," she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "You'd be bored." "I'm sure I would be." "Brad might stop by," she added, testing my reaction. "You remember Brad, right? From college?" I pretended to think about it. "Tall guy? Real estate?" "That's him. We've been reconnecting lately, just as friends." "That's nice. Old friends are important." She looked almost disappointed by my lack of reaction. Nicole thrived on jealousy, on the drama of men fighting over her. My apparent indifference was throwing her off her game. "I'll probably be late," she said. "I'll probably be asleep." But I wouldn't be asleep. I'd be at Skyline, armed with a folder full of screenshots and a plan that would make Nicole's launch party memorable for all the wrong reasons. The next evening, I watched Nicole get ready with the attention to detail of a general preparing for battle. She'd bought a new dress, red, expensive, and charged to our joint credit card. Her makeup was flawless, her hair professionally styled. She looked beautiful, confident, and completely unaware that she was walking into an ambush. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a little spin in front of our bedroom mirror. "Like $1,000,000, I said honestly. She beamed, kissed my cheek without messing up her lipstick, and headed out to what she thought would be her moment of triumph. I waited 30 minutes, then got dressed in my best suit and drove to Skyline. The rooftop was packed with TechFlow employees, investors, and the kind of networking crowd that treated every social gathering like a potential business opportunity. Nicole was holding court near the bar, surrounded by co-workers and looking every inch the successful executive celebrating her company's latest achievement. Brad was there too, standing close enough to suggest intimacy, but far enough away to maintain plausible deniability. He was exactly what I'd expected: handsome, well-dressed, and wearing the kind of confident smile that came from never having faced real consequences. I ordered a drink and found a spot where I could observe without being noticed. The plan was simple: wait for the right moment, then systematically destroy Nicole's carefully constructed image in front of everyone who mattered to her career. That moment came when Nicole's boss, a startup bro named Kevin who wore hoodies to board meetings, tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," Kevin began, launching into the kind of corporate speak that made my soul hurt. "TechFlow's success is built on the incredible team we've assembled. People who understand that innovation comes from authentic connections and genuine relationships." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Nicole glowed under the praise, basking in the attention and validation she craved. Kevin continued talking about authentic connections and genuine relationships, apparently unaware that his HR manager was running a romantic pyramid scheme that would have impressed Bernie Madoff. When he finished his speech, the crowd applauded and began breaking back into smaller groups. Nicole was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and ass-kissers, all eager to associate themselves with the company's rising star. That's when I made my move. I approached the group casually, drink in hand, wearing the kind of friendly smile that suggested I belonged there. "Nicole!" I called out, loud enough for her entire circle to hear. "There you are!" She turned, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, panic, and forced composure in the span of about 3 seconds. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you. Support my wife at her big moment." I turned to the group, which was watching our interaction with the kind of fascination reserved for potential drama. "I'm Tom, Nicole's husband. She's told me so much about all of you." There were polite murmurs and handshakes. Nicole looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Actually," I continued, pulling out my phone, "I brought something I thought you all might find interesting. Nicole's been working on a side project, a case study in modern relationship management." "Tom," Nicole's voice was tight with warning, "this isn't the time or place." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time and place. After all, your boss just gave that beautiful speech about authentic connections." I looked around the group, making eye contact with each person. Nicole's been demonstrating some very authentic connections lately. I held up my phone, showing the first screenshot, a text from Nicole to Brad describing their hotel encounter in explicit detail. For example, this authentic connection with Brad Morrison, who I believe is here tonight. "Brad, where are you?" The group turned to look for Brad, who had suddenly developed a keen interest in the city skyline. Nicole grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my jacket. "Stop this right now," she hissed. "But we're just getting started," I said, swiping to the next screenshot. "Here's another authentic connection, this one with Derek, her ex-husband. Nicole's been very busy building bridges with her past. Someone in the crowd gasped. I couldn't tell who, but the sound was music to my ears. And here, I continued, showing another message, is where she asks Derek for money to help with our financial problems. Interesting, since our joint account has more money in it than most people make in a year. Nicole was pulling on my arm now, trying to physically drag me away from the group, but I was bigger than her, and I'd been training with Maya for 2 years. I wasn't going anywhere. The really impressive part, I said, addressing the crowd like I was giving a presentation, is the logistics. Coordinating multiple relationships, keeping the stories straight, managing the emotional labor of convincing each man that he's special. It takes real organizational skills. Kevin pushed through the crowd, looking like a man who'd just realized his company party was turning into a Jerry Springer episode. I think maybe you should take this somewhere private, he suggested, but I was just hitting my stride. Oh, but the best part is still coming, I said, swiping to a screenshot of Nicole's conversation with someone named Marcus, apparently another ex who'd recently re-entered her life. Nicole's been building quite the portfolio of authentic connections. It's like a diversified investment strategy, but for emotional validation. The crowd was staring now, some looking horrified, others clearly fascinated by the train wreck unfolding in front of them. Nicole had stopped trying to drag me away and was standing frozen, her face pale under her perfect makeup. "Tom, please," she whispered. "Please what? Please continue being the safe, boring husband while you run your little side business? Please keep funding your hotel rooms and lingerie purchases while you tell everyone how unsatisfying our marriage is?" I turned back to the crowd, holding up the phone one more time. The final screenshot is my personal favorite. It's Nicole explaining to Brad how she's going to divorce me and take half of everything, including my consulting business that I built from scratch. She's got it all figured out. The timeline, the strategy, even which lawyer she's planning to use. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the rooftop, which was impressive given the downtown traffic noise. Nicole looked around the circle of faces, her co-workers, her boss, the investors and networking contacts she'd been trying to impress. Every single person was staring at her like she was a stranger. "It's not what it looks like," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" I pocketed my phone and smiled at her. "What does it look like to you?" Before she could answer, Brad appeared at the edge of the group, looking like a man who'd just realized his carefully compartmentalized life was about to explode. "Nicole, we should go," he said, reaching for her arm. I turned to him with genuine curiosity. "Brad, perfect timing. I was just telling everyone about your authentic connection with my wife. How's Jennifer, by the way? And the kids, Emma and Tyler, right? I found their pictures on Nicole's phone. Cute family." Brad went white. "You don't understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly. You're a married man screwing around with my wife while she scams money from her ex-husband to pay for your hotel rooms. Did I miss anything?" The crowd was watching this exchange like it was the most entertaining thing they'd seen all year. Someone was definitely recording it on their phone. Nicole finally found her voice. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said calmly. "I'm just sharing your authentic connections with people who appreciate genuine relationships. Isn't that what tonight is about?" Kevin stepped forward again, looking like a man who'd just watched his company's reputation catch fire. "I think everyone should probably call it a night," he announced to the crowd. But I wasn't finished. "Before everyone goes," I said, raising my voice to address the entire rooftop, "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate TechFlow's success. And I want to especially thank my wife Nicole for showing me what authentic connections really look like. It's been educational." I finished my drink, set the glass down on a nearby table, and walked toward the elevator. "Tom, wait," Nicole called after me. I turned back to look at her, standing there in her expensive red dress, surrounded by co-workers who were staring at her like she was a toxic waste spill. next to a married man who was probably calculating how quickly he could distance himself from the situation. Option 3, Nicole. You said I could deal with it or leave. I chose option 3. The elevator doors closed on her stunned face, and I rode down to street level feeling lighter than I had in months. The fallout from the rooftop incident was swift and brutal. By the next morning, Nicole's humiliation had gone viral within the city's professional networking circles. Someone had indeed recorded the whole thing, and the video was making its way through social media with the kind of velocity usually reserved for cat videos and political scandals. Nicole came home at 3 a.m., looking like she'd been hit by a truck. I was waiting in the kitchen with coffee and a folder full of divorce papers. "We need to talk," she said, slumping into a chair. "No, we don't. We need to sign papers." I slid the folder across the table. She stared at it like it might contain anthrax. "Tom, I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can. You've always been good at explanations, but I'm not interested anymore." She opened the folder with shaking hands. "You can't be serious about this." "Dead serious. I've already moved half our money into a separate account. The house is in my name, bought with money from my business before we got married. Your car payment comes out of your own account now." Nicole looked up from the papers, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely scared. "You can't just destroy my life because you're angry." "I'm not destroying your life. I'm just stopping you from destroying mine." She tried a different approach, the one that had probably worked on Derek and Brad and whoever else was in her rotation. "Baby, I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Marriage is about forgiveness, Marriage is about a lot of things," I interrupted. "Honesty, loyalty, respect. You know, all those things you've been giving to other men for the past 7 months. It wasn't 7 months. You're right. I found evidence going back almost a year. Derek was just the most recent." The color drained from her face. "You went through my phone." "I went through everything. Your phone, your laptop, your email, your credit card statements. Did you know you can track location data? Very helpful for establishing patterns." Nicole stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Who are you?" "I'm the man you married. The man you called boring and safe while you were screwing around behind my back. The man you underestimated." She was quiet for a long moment, processing this new version of her husband. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. "Fine. You want a divorce? Let's talk about what that looks like. I've been with this company for 3 years, helped build it from nothing. My career is worth something. Was worth something, past tense." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the video from the rooftop party. It had been viewed over 50,000 times in the past 6 hours. "Your boss called this morning. You're fired, effective immediately. Something about conduct unbecoming and company reputation. I thought you should know." Nicole grabbed my phone, watching herself get exposed in high definition. Her face went through several expressions before settling on pure rage. "You destroyed my career." "You destroyed your career. I just provided the documentation." She threw my phone across the kitchen. It bounced off the refrigerator and clattered to the floor. "That's going to cost you," I said calmly. "I'll add it to the list of things you owe me. Right next to the $3,000 you stole from our joint account to fund your hotel adventures." "I didn't steal anything. It was our money." "Money you spent on other men while lying to me about our financial situation. In some states, that's called fraud." Nicole stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "I'm not signing anything tonight. I need time to think, to get a lawyer." "Take all the time you need, but you're not staying here while you think about it. This is my house, too." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed. Like I said, I bought this place before we got married, with money from my business. You have no legal claim to it." She stared at me, finally understanding the scope of what was happening. "I've already packed your things," I continued. "They're by the front door. I suggest you call one of your authentic connections for a place to stay. Nicole looked around the kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. This was the house where we'd planned our future, where we'd talked about kids and retirement and growing old together. Now it was just the place where her marriage had died. "I'll fight this," she said finally. "I'll take you for everything you're worth." "With what lawyer? Your career just went up in flames, remember? And I've got documentation of every dollar you stole, every lie you told, every law you broke. Good luck finding representation." She walked to the front door, where her suitcases were waiting like loyal dogs. When she turned back to look at me, her expression was pure venom. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet." The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I picked up my phone from the kitchen floor. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. There were 17 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters or bloggers who'd gotten hold of the rooftop video. I turned off the phone and poured myself a drink. The house felt different without Nicole's presence. Quieter, but also cleaner somehow. Like a toxin had been removed from the air. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The next morning brought a visit from Detective Sarah Martinez of the Fraud Division. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint about financial irregularities and identity theft. "Mr. Davidson?" She showed her badge at my front door. "I'd like to ask you a few questions about your wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected, inviting her in. "And I'd be happy to help." Detective Martinez was in her 40s, with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd seen every variety of human stupidity and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Your wife filed a complaint yesterday alleging that you've stolen money from joint accounts and damaged her property." I almost laughed. "Would you like to see the bank records? Or the receipts for the hotel rooms she paid for with our joint credit card?" "I'd like to see everything you've got." I spent the next 2 hours walking Detective Martinez through Nicole's financial crimes. The stolen money, the fraudulent credit card charges, the identity theft she'd committed when she used my social security number to open accounts I didn't know about. By the time I finished, Detective Martinez was shaking her head. "Your wife's complaint is going to be dismissed," she said, closing her notebook. "But I might have some questions for her about these other matters." "She's staying at the Marriott downtown, room 412. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" "She used our joint credit card to book it. I get notifications for all charges over $50. After the detective left, I called Maya. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Nicole tried to have me arrested for stealing my own money." Maya laughed. "Desperate people do desperate things. What's next?" Phase 2. Phase 2 involved Brad Morrison and his carefully constructed suburban life. I'd done more research on Brad since the rooftop incident. He wasn't just a real estate developer, he was a pillar of his community. Little league coach, church deacon, member of the school board. His whole identity was built on being the perfect family man. His wife Jennifer ran a successful catering business and had no idea her husband was spending his afternoons in hotel rooms with my wife. I called Jennifer's business number. "Morrison Catering, this is Jennifer." "Hi, Jennifer. This is Tom Davidson. I don't think we've met, but I'm married to Nicole Davidson. I believe you know my wife through your husband, Brad." There was a pause. "I'm sorry. I don't think I know anyone named Nicole." "Really? That's interesting, because I have about 6 months of text messages between her and Brad discussing their relationship, including several photos they sent each other." The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Just to give you some information you might find useful. Can we meet for coffee?" An hour later, I was sitting across from Jennifer Morrison in a quiet cafe, watching her scroll through screenshots of her husband's affair. She was an attractive woman in her early 40s, with the kind of practical beauty that came from being too busy running a business and raising kids to worry about Instagram filters. "How long?" she asked, without looking up from my phone. "About 8 months, as far as I can tell." And you're just telling me now? I just found out myself. My wife is very good at keeping secrets. Jennifer handed back my phone and stared out the window for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but cold. What happens now? That's up to you, but I thought you should know what kind of man you're married to. The same kind of woman you were married to, apparently. I couldn't argue with that logic. Jennifer stood up, gathering her purse and jacket. Thank you for telling me. I know it couldn't have been easy. Actually, I said, it was easier than I expected. She almost smiled at that. I suppose it would be. After Jennifer left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, watching the afternoon crowd come and go. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their neighbors were running elaborate deception schemes and destroying marriages for sport. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Brad. We need to talk. I typed back, no, we don't. Please, you don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You're a married man who's been screwing my wife while lying to your family. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Don't contact me again. But Brad wasn't finished. 20 minutes later, he showed up at the cafe looking like a man who'd just watched his life explode in real time. Tom, please, just 5 minutes. I looked up from my laptop. What could you possibly have to say that I'd want to hear? Nicole told me you were separated. She said you were already filing for divorce, that you were seeing other people. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her. She's very convincing. She's a liar and a manipulator. The fact that you fell for it doesn't make you a victim. Brad sat down across from me without being invited. My wife is filing for divorce. She's taking the kids. My whole life is falling apart. Good. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. Good? You made a choice, Brad. You chose to believe a married woman who told you exactly what you wanted to hear so you could feel better about betraying your family. Now you get to live with the consequences. You don't understand. I love her. You love the fantasy version of her that she created for you. The real Nicole is a con artist who was running the same game on at least 3 other men while she was telling you that you were special. Brad's face went white. What do you mean, 3 other men? I pulled out my phone and showed him the evidence I'd compiled. Derek, Marcus, and 2 others I'd discovered in Nicole's digital trail. Each one getting the same treatment, the same lies, the same promises. You were never special, Brad. You were just another mark in her rotation. He stared at the screenshots like they were written in a foreign language. She told me she loved me. She told all of them she loved them. That's how the con works. Brad put his head in his hands. Jesus Christ! What kind of person does that? The kind of person who views relationships as transactions and people as resources to be exploited. When he looked up, his eyes were red. What am I supposed to do now? Learn from it. Be a better man. Try to salvage what's left of your relationship with your kids. And Nicole? Nicole's not your problem anymore. She's not my problem anymore either. Brad left the cafe looking like a man who'd just discovered that everything he thought he knew about his life was a lie. Which, I supposed, was exactly what had happened. I finished my coffee and drove home, feeling satisfied, but not quite finished. There was still one more piece of the puzzle I needed to address. That evening, I got a call from Derek. Tom, it's Derek. We need to talk. I thought we already talked. Nicole came to see me today. She's saying some crazy things about you, about what happened at her company party. What kind of crazy things? That you're stalking her, threatening her, trying to destroy her life out of jealousy. I laughed. And you believe her? I don't know what to believe anymore, but she seemed really scared. She should be scared. Her whole house of cards is collapsing, and she's finally facing consequences for her actions. Tom, I know I screwed up. I know what we did was wrong, but this has gone too far. Has it? Let me ask you something, Derek. How much money did you give her? I told you about 3,000. Try again. I've seen the bank records. There was a long pause, maybe closer to 5. The real number is $8,400. I have copies of every check, every cash withdrawal, every Venmo transfer. How could you possibly? Because she deposited it all into our joint account before spending it on hotels and lingerie and gifts for her other boyfriends. You weren't just funding your own affair, Derek. You were funding everyone else's, too. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She played you, I continued. She played all of you, and now that it's falling apart, she's trying to make me the villain. What do you want from me? Nothing. Just stay away from both of us. This story doesn't have a happy ending for anyone who was stupid enough to get involved with Nicole. I hung up before he could respond. The house felt different that night. Emptier, but also more honest. No more lies, no more deception, no more wondering what Nicole was really doing when she said she was working late. I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, thinking about the past year. All the signs I'd missed, all the red flags I'd ignored, all the times I'd chosen to trust instead of verify. Never again. My phone buzzed with one final text of the day. It was from Nicole. You've destroyed everything I worked for. I hope you're happy. I typed back, I'm getting there. Then I blocked her number and went to bed. 3 weeks later, I was back at Maya's gym, working the heavy bag like it owed me money. The rhythm was therapeutic. Jab, cross, hook, breathe. Each punch landed with the satisfying thud of problems being solved through violence. You're looking better, Maya said, watching me work. Less angry, more focused. I feel better. Cleaner. Divorce papers signed? Last week, Nicole tried to fight it, but her lawyer dropped her when she couldn't pay his retainer. Maya laughed. Hard to fund legal battles when you're unemployed and your sugar daddies have all disappeared. I threw a particularly vicious combination at the bag. She's working at a coffee shop now. Minimum wage plus tips. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. She brought it on herself. I was toweling off when my phone rang. Unknown number, which usually meant a reporter or someone else who'd seen the rooftop video and wanted to discuss it. I'd stopped taking those calls, but this one was different. Tom Davidson, this is Jennifer Morrison. We met a few weeks ago. Hi, Jennifer. How are you holding up? Better than expected, actually. The divorce is moving forward and Brad's moved out. The kids are adjusting. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Don't be. You did me a favor. I just wish someone had told me sooner. There was a pause, and I could hear something in her voice that suggested this wasn't just a social call. Actually, she continued, I'm calling because I thought you should know. Nicole contacted me yesterday. That got my attention. What did she want? She wanted to meet for coffee, said she had information about you that I might find interesting. What kind of information? She claimed you were abusive, that you'd threatened her and her friends, that the whole rooftop thing was part of a pattern of stalking and harassment. I sat down heavily on the gym bench. And what did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. But Tom, I wanted to give you a heads up. She seemed desperate, and desperate people do unpredictable things. After Jennifer hung up, I stared at my phone for a long moment. Nicole was trying to rebuild her narrative, to cast herself as the victim and me as the abuser. It was a smart play, actually. If she could convince enough people that I was the real villain, she might be able to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. But I'd learned a few things about strategic thinking in the past month. I called Detective Martinez. Davidson, she said when she picked up. How's the divorce going? Finalized. But I think I might have a problem. I told her about Nicole's attempt to contact Jennifer, about the claims of abuse and harassment. Has she filed any formal complaints? Not yet, but I think she's building up to it. Do you have any evidence of contact between you two since she moved out? None. I blocked her number, changed my locks, avoided all the places she might be. I haven't seen or spoken to her in 3 weeks. Good. Keep it that way. And document everything. If she does try to file false charges, we'll be ready. But Nicole was smarter than I'd given her credit for. Instead of filing false police reports, she launched a social media campaign. It started with a Facebook post that painted her as a domestic abuse survivor who'd finally escaped a controlling, manipulative husband. She described years of emotional abuse, financial control, and psychological manipulation. She talked about being afraid to leave, about finally finding the courage to start over. The post was a masterpiece of manipulation, full of just enough truth to be believable, and just enough lies to be devastating. She never mentioned the affairs, the stolen money, or the multiple relationships she'd been running simultaneously. Instead, she painted herself as a victim who'd been driven to seek comfort elsewhere by an abusive spouse. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, full of women sharing their own stories of abuse and praising Nicole for her bravery in speaking out. Maya showed me the post on her phone while I was cooling down from a training session. "This is bad," she said. "It's brilliant," I admitted. "She's rewriting the entire narrative." "What are you going to do?" I thought about it for a moment. The old Tom would have panicked, would have tried to defend himself against accusations that were impossible to disprove. How do you prove you're not psychologically manipulative? How do you document the absence of emotional abuse? But the new Tom had learned a few things about information warfare. I'm going to let her dig her own grave. The next day, Nicole's story was picked up by a local blogger who specialized in domestic violence awareness. The blog post was titled, "Local Woman Escapes Abusive Marriage, Finds Courage to Speak Out." It featured quotes from Nicole describing her ordeal, and painted me as a monster who'd systematically destroyed her self-esteem and isolated her from friends and family. The post included a photo of Nicole looking vulnerable and brave, staring directly into the camera with the kind of expression that suggested she'd overcome tremendous hardship to be there. It was shared thousands of times. My phone started ringing again, reporters, bloggers, advocacy groups. But this time, they weren't interested in the rooftop video or Nicole's affairs. They wanted to know about the abuse allegations. I didn't take any of the calls. Instead, I did something that Nicole probably didn't expect. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, and he specialized in digital forensics and social media investigation. He was expensive, but I figured it was worth the investment. "What exactly are you looking for?" he asked during our first meeting. "The truth. Nicole's claiming I was abusive, controlling, manipulative. I want to know if there's any evidence to support those claims. And if there isn't, then I want to know what she was really doing during our marriage." Webb smiled. "I like cases like this. Give me 2 weeks." While Webb was doing his investigation, Nicole's story continued to spread. She gave an interview to a local news station, appearing on camera with her face partially obscured to protect her safety. She described living in fear, walking on eggshells, never knowing what might set off her abusive husband. The interviewer asked about the rooftop incident. "That was Tom's way of punishing me for finally standing up to him," Nicole explained. "He'd been going through my phone, monitoring my communications, isolating me from friends. When I tried to reconnect with people from my past, he saw it as a threat to his control. She was good, really good. She took every piece of evidence against her and recontextualized it as proof of my abuse. The affairs became desperate attempts to find emotional support outside a controlling marriage. The stolen money became her trying to maintain some financial independence. Even the rooftop humiliation became an act of domestic terrorism designed to destroy her career and leave her completely dependent on me. It was a complete inversion of reality, and it was working. My consulting business started losing clients. Nobody wanted to work with someone who might be an abuser, even if the allegations were unproven. I got dirty looks at the grocery store, whispers at restaurants. Nicole had successfully turned me into a pariah in my own city. But I wasn't worried, because I knew something Nicole didn't. The truth has a way of coming out, especially when you have a good private investigator. Webb called me on a Thursday morning 2 weeks after I'd hired him. "You're going to want to see this in person," he said. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant, but his equipment was state-of-the-art. He had 3 monitors set up, displaying what looked like a complex timeline of digital communications. "Your wife is a piece of work," he said without preamble, "but she's also sloppy." He showed me what he'd found. Nicole hadn't just been running affairs during our marriage. She'd been running cons. The money she'd taken from Derek wasn't just for hotel rooms. She'd been telling him she needed help with medical bills, car repairs, and family emergencies. All lies. But Derek wasn't her only victim. Webb had found evidence of at least 6 other men Nicole had been manipulating for money over the past 2 years. She'd been using dating apps to meet divorced men, building emotional connections, then creating financial crises that required their help. "She's been running a romance scam," Webb explained. "Classic stuff, but very well executed." The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots of conversations where Nicole used different names and backstories for different victims. Bank records showing deposits from multiple men. Even a fake medical diagnosis she'd created to scam money for cancer treatments. "There's more," Webb said, pulling up another screen. "Remember Brad Morrison? The real estate guy. What about him?" "He's not the only married man she was targeting. Nicole specifically went after married men with money and reputations to protect. She wasn't just looking for sex or emotional validation, she was looking for leverage." Webb showed me evidence that Nicole had been planning to blackmail several of her targets, including Brad. She'd been collecting compromising photos and messages, building files on each man that she could use to extract money or favors. "She's not a cheating wife," Webb said. "She's a predator." But the most damning evidence was what Webb found on Nicole's laptop, which she'd apparently abandoned when she moved out of our house and couldn't afford to retrieve from the repair shop. Her browser history showed extensive research into domestic abuse narratives, legal strategies for abuse victims, and social media tactics for building sympathy and support. She'd been planning her victim narrative for months, studying how to make it convincing and legally bulletproof. There were draft Facebook posts, practice interviews recorded on her phone, even a consultation with a PR firm about reputation management and narrative control. "She's been planning this character assassination since before you caught her cheating," Webb explained. "This isn't a desperate reaction, it's a calculated strategy." I stared at the evidence, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: genuine surprise. I'd thought I understood Nicole, thought I'd figured out her motivations and methods. But this was bigger than infidelity or even financial fraud. This was sociopathic. "What do you want to do with this?" Webb asked. I thought about it for a moment. Nicole had declared war on my reputation, my livelihood, my entire life. She'd turned me into a villain in my own story, convinced half the city that I was an abuser and a monster. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me again. "I want to give her exactly what she deserves," I said. "Which is?" "The truth. All of it. In the most public way possible." Webb smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The plan was simple, but devastating. Instead of trying to defend myself against Nicole's abuse allegations, I would expose the entire scope of her criminal enterprise. The romance scams, the blackmail schemes, the calculated manipulation of multiple victims over years. But I wouldn't just dump the evidence online and hope people paid attention. I would give Nicole exactly what she'd given me, a public humiliation so complete and devastating that her reputation would never recover. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Nicole had organized a Survivors Speak Out event at the community center, positioning herself as an advocate for domestic abuse victims. She'd gotten local media coverage, lined up several speakers, and was clearly planning to use the event to cement her victim narrative and possibly launch some kind of advocacy career. The event was scheduled for a Saturday evening, with an open mic portion where survivors could share their stories. I bought a ticket. The community center was packed with well-meaning people who genuinely cared about domestic violence issues. Nicole was in her element, playing the role of brave survivor turned advocate. She gave a moving opening speech about the importance of believing victims and supporting survivors. When the open mic portion began, several women shared genuinely heartbreaking stories of abuse and survival. The audience was moved, supportive, and completely invested in the narrative Nicole had constructed. That's when I stood up. "I'd like to share a story," I said, walking toward the microphone. Nicole went white when she saw me, but she couldn't object without breaking character. She was supposed to be an advocate for survivors sharing their truth. I took the microphone and looked out at the audience, about 200 people who thought they were there to support domestic violence awareness. "My name is Tom Davidson," I began, "and I want to tell you about a predator who's been operating in our community for years." The room went dead silent. Nicole was frantically trying to get the attention of the event organizers, but they were as confused as everyone else. This predator uses dating apps and social media to target vulnerable men, particularly those who are divorced or recently separated. She builds emotional connections, gains their trust, then creates fake emergencies to extract money from them. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the venue's projection system, a feature I'd confirmed was available when I bought my ticket. She's scammed at least 6 men out of more than $30,000 over the past 2 years. She's used fake cancer diagnoses, fabricated family emergencies, and manufactured financial crises to manipulate her victims. The first screenshot appeared on the wall behind me, Nicole using a fake name to solicit money from a divorced teacher for her mother's funeral. But financial fraud is just part of her operation. She also targets married men, building sexual relationships that she documents and uses for blackmail. More screenshots appeared, Nicole's conversations with Brad and others, her plans to extract money in exchange for silence about their affairs. The audience was staring at the evidence in stunned silence. Nicole was standing at the side of the stage, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The woman who organized tonight's event, Nicole Davidson, isn't a domestic abuse survivor. She's a predator who's been systematically targeting and exploiting men in our community for years. I showed them the evidence of her romance scams, her blackmail schemes, her calculated manipulation of multiple victims simultaneously. I showed them her browser history, her practice interviews, her consultation with PR firms about how to construct a convincing victim narrative. She's not here tonight as a survivor sharing her truth. She's here as a criminal trying to avoid consequences for her actions by painting herself as a victim. The final screenshot was Nicole's own words, from a text conversation with someone named Sarah. "If I can convince everyone that Tom was abusive, I can probably get a book deal out of this whole mess. Victim memoirs are really popular right now." The room erupted. People were shouting, some at Nicole, some at me, some at each other. The event organizers were trying to restore order, but it was chaos. I handed the microphone back to the stunned moderator and walked toward the exit. "Tom, wait!" Nicole called after me, her carefully constructed persona finally cracking. "You don't understand." I turned back to look at her one last time. She was standing in front of 200 people who now knew exactly who she really was, her reputation in ruins, her victim narrative destroyed, her criminal activities exposed. "I understand perfectly," I said. "This is option 3. I walked out of the community center and drove home, leaving Nicole to face the consequences of her actions for the first time in years. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Local news, social media, even some national outlets picked up the story of the fake domestic abuse survivor who'd been running romance scams and blackmail operations. Nicole was arrested on fraud charges within a week. The evidence Webb had compiled combined with testimony from her victims, was overwhelming. I never saw her again. 6 months later, I was back at Maya's gym, working the heavy bag with the kind of focused intensity that came from having survived a war. "You look good," Maya said, watching me work. "Happy." "I feel good, clean." "Any regrets?" I thought about it for a moment. Nicole was in prison, serving 2 years for fraud and extortion. Her victims were slowly rebuilding their lives. The community center had implemented better screening procedures for their events. "No," I said finally. "No regrets at all." I threw one final combination at the bag, jab, cross, hook, and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people see who someone really is.